This is the experimental setup for the magnetic field in a loop experiment. So it looks kind of like a mess, and it in some ways is, but I'm going to walk you through the main pieces of the equipment necessary to take our data. So I'm going to start with the electrical circuit, and I always start when I'm tracing my path through an electrical circuit with the batteries. So here's the batteries. Right now I have two batteries in forming my battery pack. The positive end of the battery traces through the current probe that goes into Logger Pro, and then the other end of that comes over here to this resistor board. This is an old resistor board that was used in labs to study series and parallel circuits, but I'm just using a single 5 ohm resistor from that. After the resistor, the piece of this experiment that we're studying is we connect over here to some stiff, pretty thick gauge wire that we've wound into a series of loops by winding it around a dowel. So right now I've got, if I'm counting right, 10 loops in that coil. And then after you leave that coil, it comes back through here to the other side of the battery pack. So that's the main circuit that we're using to study in this experiment. And we're asking the question about when we send an electrical current through that coil, how big is the magnetic field that's produced? The current sensor that we have there is obviously being used to measure the amount of current, which will be important when we're doing question 1 to note that the current is staying approximately the same. And when we're doing question number 2, to verify the amount of current that we're sending through the circuit. The second piece of equipment, one that's new, is this magnetic field sensor. It measures the magnetic field in the region around this tip right here. So when I'm collecting data, I'm going to be putting the coil as centered as I can over the end of that, and then letting the sensor measure what the magnetic field is there. Got an overhead document camera to capture the action when we go into Logger Pro, and finally the computer connected to Logger Pro to collect the data for this experiment.